Events are an important part of an application, so it's very important for us to know how we can use events to react to something that the user does. Now, if you've read Lesson 16, then you have a primer on events, and if you've read Lesson 17, then you know that we are going to look at some of the primitive event handlers that we can use within our HTML page so that we can execute some code whenever the user does something. In this lesson, we are going to write a simple calculator application, and I have the HTML already written so that I don't have to do that on screen. That would take quite a few minutes. But we can go over what we have. We have a table. Its first row is going to have a cell that spans all 4 columns, and it has an ID of results. This is where we are going to display all of the information. So if I pull up Windows 7 Calculator, we can see that as we start inputting data, we can see that we have 9 plus 6, and it's keeping a running total. Now, we aren't going to keep this running total, but we are going to show the numbers that are clicked as well as the operators. So that's going to go into the results cell here. So we're going to have to write some code to do that. And then we are going to use HTML attribute event handlers, the onClick event handler to be specific, so that whenever the user clicks on each of these links, it's going to add like 1, 2, 3 and plus sign to this results element here. And that's going to be basically the pattern throughout this application. The clear is going to do something different. It's going to clear everything within the results element here, and the equal sign is then going to take everything within results and then perform an operation. It's going to actually call the eval function, which will execute that operation. So let's get started here. The first thing that we want to do is write a function that adds each of these digits and operators to this results field here. So this function is going to be called add digit. It's going to accept just one piece of data, and we are going to call that digit. That is going to be 1, 2, 3, or a string containing a plus, or things like that. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get the result field. So we are going to use document.getElementById and pass in results, because that is the ID of our results field here. And then we want to set the inner HTML of this results field to whatever digit we specify here. So I know that a couple of lessons ago I said that I wasn't going to use this syntax, but I changed my mind and I'm going to do that here. So instead of saying results field equals results field like this plus digit, I'm going to just use the shorthand version and do the plus equals, and we can get rid of that there. And now we just need to add a return false. Now, since this add digit function is actually going to be called whenever we click on one of these links, we want to return false, because that will allow us to prevent the default action of a link, which is to go to a different URL. So we want to prevent that, and we kind of have with these pound signs, but we want to make it even more so by just making it so that the browser doesn't try to go anywhere, even if it's going to go to one of these pound signs. So we are going to return false, which will tell the browser not to do the default action of an A element, and that's to go to whatever is specified within the href attribute. So now the next function we need is something to perform the calculation of the numbers and operators that we have within our results field. So let's write another function. This is going to be called calculate. We do not need to input any type of data into this function, and we once again will get the result field. So I'm just going to copy that and paste it in. And then we want to run eval on the inner HTML of the result field. Now, eval is considered evil, really. It's good because we can just feed it any type of string and it will execute it. It's bad because we can feed it any type of string and it will execute it. So there are some other things that are about eval that we really just don't want to get into, but typically we don't want to ever use eval. But just note that we are using eval here just because it makes things easier for us, and our usage here is a little benign. So as a general rule of thumb, stay away from eval even though we are going to use it here. This is a do as I say, not as I do type of thing. So we have result field, and we are going to set its inner HTML to the result of calling eval and passing in the result field.innerHTML. The inner HTML of result field could have a string that looks something like this. And so whenever we pass this string to eval, it's actually going to perform this computation here. So it's going to add 1 and 2 and 4 together to get 7, and then it's going to subtract 3 from it to get 4. And then that value, 4, is going to be assigned to this inner HTML of the result field. So we will see the actual result of this computation here. So that is the calculate function, except we do need to add return false as well, because since we are going to invoke this calculate function by clicking this equal link here, we do need to return false, because once again we want to prevent the default action of a link. And now we need to add a function to clear the calculator whenever we click the clear link. And we have the basis of that already down, so I'm going to copy calculate and paste it. I'm going to call this function reset. We are getting the result field element, and then we just need to set the inner HTML property to an empty string, and that will essentially clear our calculator for us. We have all of the JavaScript code that we need within our inline JavaScript here, so now we need to add the ability to do something whenever we click on these links, and we are going to do that with the onClick event handler. And we need to return a value, and we need to call, in this case, add digit, and then pass 1. Now we are returning here because we are returning false from these functions here. So whenever we execute add digit, we return false. Well, we then need to return that value to the onClick event handler so that the browser will not go to the pound sign that we have specified here. So we are returning a value of false by executing add digit and then returning false again. So this is a little bit easier than doing something like this. Return false. So it's just a little bit less code. So we need to add something like this to every element, and thankfully Visual Studio has something called a box selection so that I can just quickly modify that here, and let's add 3, and we need to specify a string here. We can't just pass a plus sign. So I'm going to use single quotes, and that is because I'm using double quotes to delimit the string of the onClick event handler. So we need to do the same thing down here again, and we need to add 4, 5, 6, and then once again a string containing a minus sign. And this is basically going to be the same thing all the way down. So 7, 8, 9, except when we get to here. Now X, we are using X because that is what most humans are used to seeing for multiplication. We as programmers are pretty used to seeing an asterisk. So this is for the user's sake that we are passing an asterisk here, but we are showing them that we are using an X. Because we are using eval to perform this operation, we need to pass an asterisk. Now this is where things are going to get a little bit different. We still are going to pass the digit of 0, and we are going to pass a string containing a slash here for division, but we need to call the reset function, so we will call reset, and we also need to call calculate for the equal sign. And so if we look at all of our code, everything should be fine. We are using add digit, we are passing strings when we need to, and I think we are ready to go. So let's make sure that this is saved. Let's go and open it up in our browser. And as we start clicking these links, we should start to see some calculations. Okay, that worked. Let's do clear. Let's do 9 times 2. We should get 18. Great. Let's do 8 divided by 8. We should get 1. Fantastic. And let's do 5 minus 6. We should get -1. Great. So our calculator is working perfectly. We have used these on-click event handlers to wire up events so that we can execute these functions whenever the user clicks on these links. And we are also preventing the browser from performing the default action of an A element. So this is the primitive version of our calculator. We are actually going to improve upon this as we start going through different types of event handlers. So we will actually see that within lesson 18.